dollar-for-dollar tariff counterstrike by Ottawa today. The federal government says it's imposing a retaliatory 25% levy.
Canada's bold new $920 billion economic counteroffensive against former U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs has stunned global markets, with even the European Union caught off guard by the scale and ambition of the plan. The dramatic strategy, a culmination of years of growing economic tension between Canada and the United States, represents one of the largest and most aggressive retaliatory trade measures in modern history. The move not only signifies a direct challenge to Trump's America First policies, but also establishes Canada as a formidable player in global economic warfare. With the stakes higher than ever, this unprecedented countermeasure is set to reshape the balance of North American trade and send ripples across the international financial landscape. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The origins of this colossal economic maneuver date back to the Trump administration's imposition of harsh tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. Trump justified these protectionist measures under the pretext of national security concerns, triggering outrage in Ottawa and prompting swift but measured retaliation at the time. However, as the economic impact deepened over the years and tensions simmered beneath the surface, Canada's policymakers began formulating a long-term strategy to fight back with overwhelming force. Now, with a nearly $1 trillion plan in motion, Canada is poised to leverage its economic strengths in a way that no one, especially not the EU, had anticipated. The plan is multifaceted, targeting multiple aspects of trade and investment that have historically been favorable to the U.S. economy. A key component involves a sweeping overhaul of Canada's trade infrastructure, designed to prioritize partnerships with non-American allies, while simultaneously making it more expensive for American businesses to operate within Canadian borders. This means heightened tariffs on U.S. imports, stricter regulations on American companies looking to invest in Canada, and a significant pivot toward European and Asian markets. Canada's government is also injecting billions into industrial subsidies, ensuring that domestic manufacturers are equipped to replace reliance on U.S. imports with homegrown alternatives. A particularly devastating element of the strategy lies in Canada's control over crucial raw materials that are vital to American industries. Rare earth minerals, essential for everything from electronics to military technology, have long been a silent bargaining chip in Canada's hands. With this new economic plan, Canada is poised to weaponize its supply chain dominance by restricting exports to the U.S., while simultaneously forming stronger alliances with European and Asian tech giants. This will force American manufacturers to scramble for alternative sources, driving up production costs and disrupting supply chains that have traditionally relied on stable Canadian exports. Energy policy plays a central role in the strategy as well. Canada's vast oil and natural gas reserves have historically flowed south into the United States, providing a steady supply of energy for American consumers. However, with this retaliatory blueprint in place, Canada is shifting its focus toward expanding pipelines and energy partnerships with Europe and Asia. New infrastructure investments are being fast-tracked to facilitate energy exports to global markets, reducing dependence on the U.S. and ensuring that Canada can dictate the terms of its resource trade in a way that maximizes leverage over its southern neighbor. This recalibration will undoubtedly have a significant impact on American energy security and could drive up domestic fuel prices, further complicating an already volatile economic landscape. One of the most surprising aspects of this plan is the aggressive investment push into high-tech industries. Canada is allocating hundreds of billions of dollars toward research and development in sectors that have been historically dominated by American firms. Artificial intelligence, quantum computing, aerospace, and pharmaceuticals are among the key industries receiving unprecedented levels of funding. By fostering a robust ecosystem of innovation, Canada aims to weaken U.S. technological hegemony while strengthening its own position as a global leader in cutting-edge advancements. This shift will create new economic alliances with European and Asian tech powerhouses, diminishing American influence in a domain that has long been considered its stronghold. The financial sector is not spared from the retaliatory measures either. Canada's new approach involves leveraging its banking system to restrict American financial institutions' access to certain lucrative markets within the country. This means tighter regulations on U.S. investment firms, limitations on mergers and acquisitions, and a reinforced commitment to keeping key Canadian corporations out of American control. This policy is designed to insulate Canada's economy from external influence while simultaneously making it harder for American companies to profit from Canadian assets. The ripple effects will be felt across the financial world as investors scramble to reassess their positions in light of these sweeping changes. Beyond economics, there are serious geopolitical implications to consider. Canada's decision to take such a bold stance signals a new era of assertiveness in its international dealings. No longer content to be seen as America's passive neighbor, Canada is establishing itself as an independent force with its own strategic priorities. The European Union, caught off guard by the scale of this plan, now finds itself in a position where deeper economic ties with Canada could become a necessity rather than an option. As Canada reduces its economic reliance on the U.S., European leaders must navigate this new reality carefully, balancing their own trade interests while maintaining stability in the face of shifting alliances. China and other Asian markets are also watching closely, recognizing the potential opportunities that arise from Canada's economic realignment. With the U.S. facing increasing isolation due to protectionist policies, Canada's willingness to embrace new trading partners could lead to strengthened economic ties with nations that have long sought alternatives to American-dominated markets. This development has the potential to reshape global trade networks, positioning Canada as a critical player in an increasingly multipolar economic order. The sheer scale of Canada's $920 billion counteroffensive underscores the depth of frustration that has accumulated over years of trade disputes. Rather than relying on piecemeal retaliatory tariffs, Canada is opting for a comprehensive and systemic shift that will alter the foundation of North American trade. The move is not just about economic retaliation. It is about asserting sovereignty, securing long-term economic stability, and redefining the nation's place in the global market. At its core, this strategy sends a clear message. Canada is no longer willing to tolerate being treated as a secondary player in economic negotiations. The old paradigm of trade relations, in which Canada was often expected to compromise in the face of American demands, is being dismantled. Instead, Canada is stepping into a position of strength, using its economic assets to dictate the terms of engagement on the world stage. The implications of this shift will be felt not just in North America, but across the entire global economy. As the world watches the rollout of this historic economic maneuver, questions remain about how the U.S. will respond. With the political landscape in Washington in flux and economic uncertainty on the rise, the pressure is mounting for American policymakers to devise a counter-strategy. However, the magnitude of Canada's plan makes it clear that this is not a simple trade dispute. It is a fundamental restructuring of economic power dynamics that will shape the future of global trade for years to come. The ramifications of Canada's $920 billion economic counteroffensive against Trump's tariffs are set to extend far beyond simple trade disputes, influencing industries, global investment patterns, and even the political landscape in ways that are only beginning to be understood. The scope and ambition of this plan place Canada in an entirely new position, shifting it from being a regional economic power to a country capable of exerting influence on international markets at a level previously thought unattainable. This strategy does not merely retaliate against U.S. policies, it creates a blueprint for long-term economic independence and strategic diversification that could permanently alter Canada's role in the global financial system. One of the most immediate effects of Canada's plan is the increased uncertainty among U.S. businesses that have traditionally relied on Canadian imports and supply chains. Many of these companies, ranging from automotive manufacturers to major tech firms, built their operations on the assumption of seamless trade between the two countries. The introduction of new tariffs, coupled with stricter regulations on American businesses operating in Canada, forces these firms to either absorb higher costs or search for alternative suppliers, both of which erode their competitive advantage. The disruption is particularly severe in industries such as auto manufacturing, where Canada has historically played a key role in supplying parts and assembly capabilities for major U.S. brands. By shifting trade policies so dramatically, Canada is effectively pushing American companies into a logistical crisis. The agricultural sector is another domain where the effects of Canada's counteroffensive will be deeply felt. The long-standing agricultural trade between the two nations has allowed for a steady flow of produce, livestock, and dairy products across the border. But this is now set to change dramatically. With the new policies favoring domestic agricultural production and prioritizing exports to non-American markets, U.S. farmers are likely to experience significant losses. Given that many American agricultural businesses have relied on Canadian buyers for decades, the sudden withdrawal of this economic relationship could have devastating consequences. This shift will also encourage Canada to deepen its partnerships with European and Asian agricultural importers, securing new revenue streams while further distancing itself from American dependency. Beyond immediate economic concerns, the geopolitical ramifications of this policy shift cannot be overstated. Canada's decision to forge new trade alliances, particularly with Europe and Asia, signals a broader realignment in global economic power structures. The European Union, previously a secondary trade partner for Canada in many industries, now has the potential to become a primary economic ally. With Canada's newfound willingness to prioritize EU trade, there is an opportunity for a more integrated and cooperative relationship that could include shared investment in technology, defense, and critical infrastructure. The surprise among EU leaders at the scope of Canada's plan underscores just how unexpected this shift has been, but it also highlights the potential for new economic opportunities that neither party had previously explored to this extent. The expansion of trade relationships with Asia is equally significant. Canada's vast reserves of natural resources, particularly in energy and mining, make it an attractive partner for emerging Asian economies looking to secure stable supply chains. As Canada redirects its energy exports away from the US and toward Asian markets, this could establish a new geopolitical reality in which Canada becomes a primary energy supplier for countries like China, Japan, and South Korea. The long-term implications of such a shift are profound, as it would not only weaken U.S. influence in the global energy market, but also provide Canada with enhanced bargaining power on the world stage. With energy security becoming an increasingly critical issue, Canada's decision to shift its export focus represents a strategic maneuver that could reshape the balance of power in global energy politics. A key aspect of Canada's counteroffensive involves its aggressive expansion of domestic industries that have traditionally relied on U.S. investment. The multi-billion-dollar push to develop high-tech sectors, manufacturing, and resource extraction capabilities serves a dual purpose: reducing dependence on American capital, while simultaneously creating new opportunities for international investment. This initiative is already attracting interest from European and Asian investors who see Canada as a stable and lucrative alternative to the unpredictability of U.S. markets. By creating an environment in which foreign investors can thrive without the dominance of American economic interests, Canada is positioning itself as a leader in global innovation and industrial growth. This shift toward economic self-sufficiency also brings significant changes to Canada's financial sector. With policies aimed at limiting U.S. financial influence within Canada, domestic banks and investment firms are being given the tools to expand their control over key economic sectors. This means greater autonomy for Canadian corporations, less risk of foreign takeovers, and an overall strengthening of the country's financial independence. While this may initially create tensions with Wall Street, the long-term benefit for Canada is a more resilient and self-sustaining financial system that is not as vulnerable to external shocks from American economic policies. The broader global reaction to Canada's strategy is still unfolding, but one thing is clear: this is not just a momentary trade dispute, but a permanent restructuring of economic relationships. Countries that previously viewed Canada as a secondary player in global trade are now reassessing their positions and exploring new opportunities for collaboration. European leaders in particular are eager to deepen economic ties, recognizing that a stronger Canadian economy could serve as a counterbalance to American economic dominance. Meanwhile, Asian markets are exploring ways to integrate Canadian resources and technology into their long-term development plans. This newfound global interest in Canada marks a turning point in the country's economic history, as it shifts from being a trade-dependent nation to one that actively shapes international commerce. For the United States, the consequences of this shift could be severe. The assumption that Canada would always be a reliable trade partner has been upended, forcing American policymakers to reconsider their approach to North American economic relations. The U.S. may attempt to negotiate new trade agreements in an effort to mitigate the damage, but with Canada now holding significant leverage, any future deals will likely be on Canada's terms. The erosion of American economic influence in Canada could also serve as a precedent for other countries that have been on the receiving end of Trump-era protectionist policies. If Canada can successfully break away from U.S. trade dependency, other nations may follow suit, leading to a broader decline in American economic hegemony. The sheer scale of Canada's plan ensures that its effects will not be limited to short-term economic adjustments. The long-term vision behind this strategy is one of economic empowerment, diversification, and strategic independence. By investing nearly $1 trillion into restructuring trade policies, industrial development, and international alliances, Canada is not merely reacting to past injustices, it is actively shaping the future of its economy for generations to come. This is a declaration that Canada is no longer willing to be defined by its relationship with the U.S., but rather by its own ambitions and global influence. As this bold strategy unfolds, the global economic landscape will be forced to adjust. Nations that once viewed Canada as an extension of the U.S. market will now have to engage with it as a fully independent economic power. For Canada itself, the challenges of executing such a vast and complex economic shift will be significant, but the rewards could be even greater. If successful, this plan will cement Canada's status as a dominant force in international trade, proving that even the most deeply entrenched economic relationships can be rewritten with the right combination of strategy, investment, and determination. The psychological and diplomatic impact of Canada's $920 billion counteroffensive cannot be overlooked. This bold maneuver has fundamentally changed how global powers perceive Canada, not just as a resource-rich neighbor of the U.S., but as a sovereign economic force capable of dictating its own trade policies. This newfound assertiveness is also likely to embolden other nations that have faced economic pressure from the United States, potentially inspiring them to explore similar strategies of economic diversification and independence. Canada's willingness to challenge the status quo has set a precedent that trade relationships need not be dictated by historical ties alone, but can be reshaped by shifting global priorities. In Washington, the shockwaves of this strategic shift will inevitably lead to a reassessment of how the U.S. engages with its closest allies. The assumption that Canada would always prioritize American economic interests has been dismantled, forcing policymakers to navigate a new reality where Canada operates on equal footing rather than as a dependent partner. This could lead to diplomatic recalibrations, with the U.S. either attempting to re-establish favorable trade agreements or doubling down on its own protectionist measures, both of which will have significant consequences for North American stability. On a more granular level, the impact of Canada's plan will ripple through industries that are now forced to adapt to the new landscape. From energy and technology to agriculture and finance, companies will have to rethink supply chains, investment strategies, and long-term market engagements. Investors worldwide will closely watch how Canada executes this massive economic transition, with the outcome serving as a case study for how a mid-sized global economy can successfully assert its independence from a dominant economic partner. What began as a reaction to Trump's tariffs has now evolved into one of the most transformative economic shifts in modern history. The global financial markets will also experience ripples from Canada's economic shift, with investors re-evaluating their positions in light of this new reality. As Canada becomes more self-sufficient and diversifies its trading partners, global investment strategies will inevitably adjust. Countries that were previously hesitant to engage with Canada on a larger scale may now see the country as a key economic player and a stable partner in uncertain times. The realignment could lead to an influx of foreign direct investment into Canadian industries, further solidifying the nation's place as a major economic and geopolitical force in the 21st century. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Canada's $920 billion plan against Trump's tariffs? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.